Thank you for joining. My name is Eric Kastlander, and I'm from OSHA, and also the chair of the Global IAM Working Group. And with me today, master or partner in crime, is Luke Cayley. Luke, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello to those online. My name is Luke Cayley. I'm the information management lead for the IFRC, the Red Cross Red Crescent. Thanks a lot, Eric.
And Luke will be summarizing towards the end a little bit of, the gist of what we've discussed today and perhaps some next steps. Okay, so we gather here today in a situation that is abnormal, right? We have, of course, huge pressure, from climate change, from the funding crisis that we're all experiencing, with needs increasing dramatically, and at the same time, of course, resources not being enough. So we have today with us online and in situ a panel of experts that have as their forte, so to speak, the technology, the AI, the natural language processing capabilities and so forth. And these technologies have the potential of perhaps alleviating some of those pressures that we're faced with as a system. So we'll see today from them what are the pros and perhaps what are some of the cons in using advanced technology to counter these pressures that we're facing. They will come with concrete examples of these technologies in action. We will hear specifically on DEEP, but also on other innovative tools. And the organizations that we have with us today, you see it on the screen. We have the German Red Cross, we have DFS, ESRI, Dataminr, ALSIS, and CARTO. Of course, Luke introduced himself before from IFRC. I thought those applause were like a background effect or something like that. So, but if it wasn't, then we could use that in any case. I encourage both you here in the room, but also online, to engage in this conversation. We will, towards the end, have a proper Q&A session, but you can feel free to also type in some questions in the chat, and then we will try to summarize or cluster those questions into more pointed questions to the panel members. So without further ado, let's introduce the panel, and they will introduce themselves, starting with here in the room, Liz to my left. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Olson. I am a technical project manager with the Social Innovation Lab at Dataminr. Dataminr is an AI company based in New York City who has created an AI platform for generating alerts based on real-time information. Our offerings relevant to this group, we have created a platform called First Alert, which is for nonprofits in the public sector, which ingests information from over 1 million different data sources and over 100 different languages, multimodal data, so text, photos, videos, etc., and tags that information, shares it with folks that are interested in receiving an alert on that. We have a new program which provides 3 free licenses for any NGO that's interested in trying the program. Secondly, I manage the AI for Good program at Dataminr. Our first call for proposals is launching on May 1st, which is an application-based technical grant for working with Dataminr's AI researchers to build custom AI solutions. Thanks.
Super, and welcome, Liz. Jose, over to you.
Well, I'm Jose Cobos. I'm not Nojito Orozco, my colleague from Datafield Space. I'm not in the slide, but I'm Jose Cobos. I work as, I lead analysis and innovation in Datafield Space. It's an NGO that does tech, NLP, natural language processing, AI, as we all know now, and analytics. I also work for data entry and exploration platform. I started as a data tagger, and since 3 years back, I lead capacity building efforts and search efforts for the deep. I also work as a consultant on risk analysis, and recently I work as a guest professor for the University of Deusto, actually trying to share these recent insights that bring us here on AI and human evolution. So thanks for inviting me.
Super. So let's shift to the panel members online, and we'll start with Ibru.
Hi, everybody. This is Ebru from German Red Cross. My title is Technical Manager, Deep Specialist. So as you can tell from the title, my job has a lot to do with the tool, with the Deep platform. And also I have history working with the platform from IFRC Turkey country office. I managed 2 major projects, one for a protracted crisis in Turkey on refugees, and another one for the earthquake in 2023. So I have a lot of experience working with the tool, and for about 1.5 years now at German Red Cross, I have been working also with IFRC, and I have taken this focal point role, doing a lot of advocacy for the use of the deep in nature disaster response, and also a lot of capacity development for that goal. And I have been also working with the DFS team, testing different NLP features and suggesting different improvements during these 1.5 years. Thank you.
Welcome, Ebru, and over to you, Rami.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rami Aluta. I'm a senior solution engineer with Esri. I've been around for 9 years now, and I've put a lot of hats through my journey. Currently, I'm mainly supporting our GeoAI/Gen AI initiatives on the global scale, focusing on our humanitarian, nonprofit, and mapping agencies in specific. Through my years at Esri, I've really worked closely with deploying ArcGIS system in its all enterprise and SaaS patterns. So I've got deep understanding on system architecture and on workflow automation within the system, which really comes in handy as we start implementing our different GeoAI capabilities, as a lot of what our customers and the different groups within the humanitarian sector precisely and extended beyond are looking to really building systems that they can automate and are AI enabled at the same time. And with that, I'll give to the next person. Thanks.
Thanks, Rami. Welcome. Richard, over to you.
Thanks, Luke. I'm Richard Britton. I'm the Managing Director at Alsys, an information services company with a strong emphasis in geographic information systems. We've had over 20 years of providing advanced analytics in fragile conflict-affected states and regions. And we work with donors, implementers, research organizations to really better understand the challenges, the issues, and the context to better develop solutions. So what we do is we work with those stakeholders around policy development, strategies, program design, program delivery, through into implementation, and wrapping around the entirety of that, a lot into monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning across all of the thematics that you can imagine might be relevant in those sorts of areas, be it emergency response through humanitarian, through development. A lot of emphasis on academic research and staying in touch with emerging capabilities, technologies, data. A lot of work around spatial data infrastructure to make sure that we can build resilient systems, and capacity building, both within institutions and multiple institutions and organizations. I think key to how we do what we do is I visualize a triangle of combination, an absolute emphasis on getting into the field. So boots on the ground, qualitative data collection, using digital tools and technologies to timestamp collection, strong emphasis on satellite imagery, remotely sensed data, and geodata that we might derive from the field, from remote sensing, from other sources, and driving that to micro levels. So we can get beyond the admin level, down into household community level, get that onto platforms for collaborative work, and innovate the methodologies. And there we find the data gaps that need filling, for which now harnessing AI, which we've been doing for the last 6 years, is really powerful at contributing there. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard. Last but definitely not least, Julia, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So hello, everyone. My name is Giulia Carella. I'm a principal data scientist at Carto, a location intelligence platform that extends on the cloud capabilities of commonly used data warehouses such as BigQuery, Snowflake, Amazon Redshift, and Databricks. Carto, for those of you who haven't used it or don't know what it is, actually works across different sectors, and the humanitarian sector is one of them. But what we provide is advanced geospatial capabilities that can be accessed also to easily by non-technical users. And a set of tools that we implemented that allows really everyone to get insights from maps. And this, of course, applies also to nonprofit organizations. I have a lot of experience in the applications of AI, machine learning, and statistics, specifically in geospatial context. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So as you can see, I think if I say that we have a well-qualified panel, you would agree. Great. Now we have clarified that point. So maybe the first question then to the panel, and I'll start with you, Julia, but the question goes to all of you, but maybe Julia, you can go first. So all of this is super interesting, naturally, but I think also the audience would be interested in hearing some practical examples of how you've implemented these technologies in operations that are, something that we can associate with.
Sure. Carto has worked a lot with different organizations and non-profit organizations, and I have many examples that I can pick from. But what I wanted to mention today are a couple of examples that are related to two different use cases. One is about understanding the impact of climate change on road networks. We worked recently with the Hawaiian Department of Transportation, and together with Google Cloud, we developed a solution for them to empower stakeholders to identify climate change related risks to the transportation network in Hawaii. And this solution had a lot of challenges because required data, technological capabilities, but also visualization capabilities. And we worked with the Hawaiian department to gather all the requirements to be able to implement the solution successfully. This included gathering data from our catalog of proprietary data and open source data, but also helping them setting up the visualization part of the solution, and also helping them accessing our GeoAI tools to be able to extract insights from the maps that can be easily accessed through a conversation rather than a manual type of analysis. Another type of example that I think it's worth mentioning here on a different level is the work that we've done with Save the Children UK. In this case, we wanted to help them visualizing in a scalable and efficient way very detailed small area estimates of child poverty across the sub-Saharan Africa. And the way we've done that is through leveraging our visualization capabilities, but also for the other use case, using a tool that we have implemented to extract insight using conversational way from maps that can be accessed by really anyone that speaks, well, in this case, English, but it could be extended to any other language, really, and can help stakeholders. In this case, getting insights in terms of where to focus investments in key child sectors, or even getting insights on how climate change might affect poverty in this region.
Okay, super interesting. Ebru, you mentioned that you've worked with DEEP in the past. Do you have some examples also how this has been implemented? I think you're on mute, Ebru.
Yeah, sorry. To start with IFRC in Turkey, it started with a really large project for a protracted crisis situation. So we were part of a partnership with Turkish Red Crescent, and we were managing a really large project it was a cash project for refugees. So that's why we were really interested in everything that was happening with the refugee communities in Turkey. So we started to use DEEP for that purpose, and we started to build this, actually the largest database on this topic that included everything that was appearing in major media outlets, both nationally and internationally, but also everything published by different humanitarian agencies, even academic reports that was published on this issue. And we were using these collected data, which was processed then by a tagging team that we hired through DFS. It was like 5 people tagging team, even though the number changed over time, depending on the need. We were able to then use this tagged processed data to turn it into either different really large scale reports. We published reports on livelihoods, on social cohesion, on refugee mobility in Turkey, but we also used it for smaller size data needs that the project needed. And at the end, we were able to process over 4,000 documents. These are secondary data published in different places. And we really were able to build this database that we aimed to build. But then in 2023, the earthquake hit, and we had to change our focus on this new crisis. And then we were able to again come together initially with different agencies, including, of course, DFS, but also other agencies like OCHA, IMAP. We started a new project for this one. Again, we were working with a tagging team of 5 people, but also 2 analysts. And we also had search support from IFRC. And this was a really successful implementation of the use for DEEP for sudden onset crisis situation. And we were able to inform not only our operations, but also the larger humanitarian sector by publishing over 20 reports, which were like cross-sectoral updates on a regular basis through Relief Web, but we also published 4 different thematic reports. But we were also internally informing our operations through different briefings that were also informed by this data. And finally, as part of GRC, through IFRC we became part of the sudden onset crisis for the Hurricane Beryl that happened in 4 countries in the Caribbean region. And for this project, similar to the earthquake project, we were able to use DEEP again, and we processed a large amount of data over like about 1,300 different sources, both from media again and humanitarian sector. And then we again turned these into public reports hopefully informing different operations in the humanitarian sector. So I can give these 3 examples, I think.
Many thanks, Ebru. You mentioned the Hurricane Beryl. Jose, you had a twist to that as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. Yeah, indeed. And first of all, in relation to what Ebru said, and she said very briefly, but part of the success of the data response to the Syria-Turkey earthquake, at least what it has to do with the deep and that was readiness and preparedness, and it doesn't always happen. We were lucky enough that they were working in country for a long time before that happened, and it allowed us to actually respond in a matter of hours. And I cannot stress this enough. I advocate for the use of deep not only in crisis times but before. And I wanted to mention because it was a great work and it was a shared success for all. On Hurricane Beryl, as well as Andrew said, deep is now institutionalized as part of the disaster response, as part of the assessment analysis work itself. So the project was created in collaboration with other partners. Also, that's something to highlight. It's not only the deep team or data space, but more partners coming together. And yeah, we combined the use of the deep also with another tool that we from the FS have created. Is called Ganet, and it's a humanitarian chatbot. Basically, the difference as compared to others is the knowledge database. So the sources that it pulls are humanitarian. It doesn't allow for hallucination. So and at the end, it's a combination of, and they're complementary somehow. So in the first 48 hours, you need agility, you need fast response, so you need to pull wherever comes fast. While Deep gives us this robust data collection process that allows for data annotation, detailed data annotation, knowledge retention, while Ganet, as I said, gives you that fast response. So yeah, we indeed combined both approaches. More recently, out of Hurricane Beryl and inspired on Ganet, this virtual assistant that I described, we created something else that is what we call the situation hub. It's an automated solution or automated portal for analysis on which us or we analysts, we verify and curate the outputs that the system gives us. And well, the use case is different. We're now deploying in 3 countries, in Sudan, Lebanon, and Myanmar. And it allows for localizing, AI in this case, enables localizing and ensuring sustainability of analysis. It allows for example, covering forgotten crisis and moving away from that model that, well, basically I'm part of, and I've always been that is, yeah, well, professional analysts working remotely always, and that cannot be sustained over time. And I think AI is key for being able to bring that analysis capabilities to closer to the field. So I would say those are 2 of the use cases. And back to you, Eric.
Okay, great. I think Rami, you had some examples also of generative AI and for rapid damage assessments.
Absolutely, and I'm hoping later we get a chance to really see some of this in action. But really listening from what we've been talking about and the different use cases, they all overlap in a way in where all these different organizations are active and what we're doing. And from an Esri perspective, as I started earlier in my introduction, we really present AI and ArcGIS as 2 different main components, a GeoAI and a generative AI, Gen AI assistant component. I'll give really a use case on both, but I want to dive a little bit into GeoAI as that is a 6 years, 7 years type of workflow by now, and it's always being really advanced, new capabilities are being added and whatnot. And if I want to look at GeoAI in a humanitarian sector, there's really 2 types of workflows that can be applied. A very rapid damage assessment workflow, which you can utilize new tools, GPT tools, to extract information. There's some use cases in Turkey, in Los Angeles, and Morocco on really interrogating imagery, utilizing GPT models as ChatGPT, OpenAI servers, downloading local models as Llama and integrating them directly to your ArcGIS to be able to extract information from the imagery. That is the more newer, latest version. But also, if you dive a little bit, and you mentioned Hurricane Beryl, there was an ITU webinar that we published a while ago in collaboration with ITU, where we specifically discussed that use case. In a traditional AI workflow, we support a lot of out-of-the-box models and foundational models that are more neural network-based models. You train them to detect something from imagery and they give back something. The most famous of these is the SAM-based models, so TechSAM, SAM-LoRa, for instance, and we've utilized these in Gaza, in Grenada, to really classify imagery and classify damaged buildings to non-damaged buildings, for instance. Another form that is really helpful and is coming strong in the field of AI and GIS is the AI assistant. So we're away from rapid damage assessment, from extracting features that tell us this is damaged or not. We all deal with a lot of data. We have data that comes as features, but we also have PDFs, we have documents, we have story maps, applications, all these type of things. And we really want to make these resources available and tailored for our end users through assistants that can help us find them. And for that, there was a use case that we've lately published, and I can share the link for that. For instance, after the Los Angeles fires, we know that there's a lot of data availability, well, a bulk of data available for that region, and users utilize GPTs in this use case, an assistant that is hooked to ArcGIS Hub that can help them find fire-related data, damaged buildings, areas that they can get emergency assistance from, and whatnot. So a lot of advancements within the field, and as we're seeing, there's a lot of different verticals that are starting to reflect the different AI work, again, under the umbrella of GeoAI and AI assistance, and over.
Super, Rami. And maybe to you, but also to the rest of the panel members, if you have relevant publications or papers that build on what you're contributing with now, please put them in the chat so that the participants can dive deeper into these at their own discretion. We're a bit under time pressure, but which is a hint, right? Liz, over to you for some examples from you.
Yeah, sure. So for some quick examples, so one of the areas that we've seen throughout our AI for Good projects that has been quite useful for nonprofits and UN agencies is leveraging AI to process unstructured data and identifying events. So what do I mean by unstructured data? Those are multimodal data sources like raw text, images, audio data, etc. So, audio data identifying specific sounds, drone strikes, gunshots, etc. Video data identifying certain types of events, certain types of vehicles, tanks, weapons. And then in text, there's a lot of applications for that. I would say one of our quite successful projects was actually our first AI for Good project with the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights. The group that we were working with is tasked with identifying attacks against human rights defenders around the world. Through leveraging natural language processing, we were able to both identify news articles referencing attacks against human rights defenders, as well as use named entity extraction to extract information that they needed in order to report their tracking a sustainable development goal on this. So the type of human rights defender that has been attacked, certain characteristics about them. So we've been able to help several different organizations, particularly in structuring text data. Another example of this is we worked with Ushahidi last year. Ushahidi is a Kenyan nonprofit that crowdsources information. They've created a platform to crowdsource data. Previously, they were processing a lot of this information manually. So we were able to leverage AI to both geolocate their posts, in part using humanitarian OpenStreetMaps, great API, as well as to categorize the type of content that they were receiving. And this actually ended up saving them hundreds of hours of manual and volunteer labor. So helping to automate this operational data tagging and really focus on analyzing the information that they've received.
Advertising is allowed in this panel. It's okay. It's okay. Richard, last but not least, you, a few examples from ALSIS.
Thanks, Eric. Well, look, I'll keep it to one, given time pressures. But this is around microdata, using AI for gap filling on data. I'll bring you through an example of Afghanistan and the climate challenges it faces, which relates to drought, famine, food security. And in effect, one of the missing components with FuseNet, with FAO IPC, a lot of people who work on agricultural programs, is field level crop mapping. And so what we did in order to enable a famine early warning system, one of the critical data inputs was to do that. So we used machine learning to use Sentinel, multi-dated Sentinel imagery collected over the entirety of Afghanistan, so that we could then generate from it field boundaries and crop content for the winter cycle across the whole country. Now, no one has ever done that. It's not been repeated in the Afghan context, but we now have that for the last 6 years. So as an output, very helpful, that can go into the famine early warning system. It can go into development programs in terms of activity planning. But in terms of outcome, what it was able to show in particular, there was a particular anomaly in agricultural practice between 2022 and 2023, which was when the Taliban banned opium cultivation. And what came through in stark contrast was in 22, a lot of opium, 23, very little. And that stood out in the mapping. And so as an outcome, we were able to target delivery assistance to those impacted by the ban, who might have been dependent on opium, who now don't have it as a cash crop and as an income, to bear that factor in mind on program delivery. But at the impact level, much more strategically, at the policy level, it was evidence that a ban was in place, that despite the rumors and the whispers that there was a reduction in opium poppy cultivation, it wasn't until the map was produced and we released it with the BBC that it got global attention, because it showed you this contrast. It became real. And it became a mechanism around which agencies, donors, can actually begin to engage with the de facto authorities in Afghanistan around a particular issue that the authorities had achieved an impact, that whilst donors wouldn't want to necessarily welcome it or congratulate them for it, it was a mechanism to begin the means of a discussion, because the data was in the public domain and it was available. It could be tested, verified, and drawn on. So as an example of a single data layer, it was profoundly impactful at a whole load of levels of use and relevance.
Super. Many thanks for that, Richard. I'd like to switch gears now because all what you're saying sounds great. You know, the power of technology is there, you know, you're spearheading these efforts, etc. But what are some of the key challenges that you face deploying these technologies? Maybe Rami, what do you think, as like a chapeau helicopter picture? What are some of the challenges that you see that, you know, off the cuff, so to speak?
I think really the first that comes out to my mind is scalability of these workflows. In a lot of use cases, any AI workflow that we start with, if you deal on a small scale, if you're working with a couple of documents or you're working with a small area of interest, from a square kilometer perspective or square meter, things are easy. They're fast. You can get done with your own machine and move forward. But then when we talk on scales similar to Afghanistan, for instance, or other countries in Africa, we're talking sometimes about massive scales, and processing data scales would be a little bit of a challenge. So coming into the right architecture, coming into the right components? How can we save money on machine time or hardware time? When it's up and when is it down? And what available resources are out of the box that I can utilize that will save me the processing time, which equals to money that we're losing, specifically these days when it comes to all organizations funding. So that would be really the most demanding challenge. Right after, I think automatically of which models to use and what to utilize. There's tons of models out there, and there's no real proper decision tree of if you want to do land cover mapping, you should use, for instance, UNet with this cell size to get these features. A lot of different workflows are out there, and sometimes finding the sweet spot one might be a bit of a challenge also. Over.
Okay, no, thanks for that. I think that strikes a chord with most, right? I mean, it's a bit of a chaotic situation out there right now, and it needs to stabilize in a sense. But that's a natural process in itself. We will get to it. Richard, what do you think in terms of the challenges?
Well, I would start with a conversation I had with a information management officer this morning, who is a cluster IMO at the national level, recounting how he's now lost 4 regional IMOs from a team of 6 down to 2, and they're backfilling with a UN volunteer as a 3rd IMO. You know, for me, you know, we can talk about some phenomenal capability here, and it's wizardry and fabulous, but it needs country office engagement. And if we're going to get ground truth in order to train these models, then we need investment in getting boots on the ground. That needs senior management engagement. And if senior management in countries do not recognize the value of information management and data, then that's a real issue. I think, you know, in my conversations, as much around senior management and middle management, understanding data, that data literacy and data value, in order that we can put in some sustainable capability. So that's one of several, but I'll pause there.
No, thanks a lot for that, Richard. And that, of course, yeah, I mean, senior management buy-in, but also, of course, donor buy-in, right? In the end, it follows that. Liz, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first, you know, in terms of developing models that will work effectively in crisis settings, there are several challenges. So one is getting access to relevant data. Relevant data is necessary for training the models as well as for something to run the models on. And many humanitarian contexts operate in data scarce environments where information online is quite limited. So with a lack of this type of training data, that can make it hard for the models to be fit for purpose to operate in these scenarios. In particular, in the natural language processing world, we talk about low resource languages. That means languages that natural language processing technology has not been developed and trained on primarily. So while languages like English, French, and Chinese are really well supported with existing AI models, smaller languages are not. In part because of a lack of training data. So languages like Wolof or Sudanese Arabic don't have the existing infrastructure within existing AI models to function well, which obviously leads to challenges if you were trying to develop models that work in processing this language or serving folks that speak these languages. And then on the uptake side, you know, if there's a new technology, it's really challenging to train folks on the ground in the middle of a crisis. Jose talks about this a little bit, but like, you know, if during the Turkey earthquake, your project was so effective because you had existing users who were really familiar with the technology. And that's what we found as well, is when we have existing first alert users in an area when crisis breaks out, they're able to really quickly snap into action and use the technology. However, when folks try to access it for the first time when they're already in the midst of a crisis, there's really just not the capacity to get trained, get set up, while, you know, so many different challenges are going on. And also, I mean, there's issues with bandwidth in certain circumstances. Again, if there's low internet connectivity, it can be hard to access the information on the ground that you need that's coming out of these sophisticated tools.
Okay. Before giving the floor to you, Julia, maybe Jose will link up with your input.
Thanks. And actually, it is we mentioned the success case of Turkey because there was a pre-existing work and so. But for example, it was a clear example of one of those challenges that I think now we're starting to overcome. That is the lack of trust on AI solutions. And when we first tried to bring a solution, partners were, hey, we're in the middle of a response. Maybe, it's not the moment, it's not the time. I do understand because it has certain implications, but I mean, as an example of those challenges that we're starting now to leave behind, and people are starting to trust AI. And I'm going to link it to your intervention, but also to Richard's. We need to build capacities, but in order to build capacities, senior management need to value IAM services and the AI, and again we depend also on public data, and that's something. I mean, it's aside, but the fact that AI brings you fast or attractive solutions does not mean that there should not be investment on primary data collection. And so at the end, for example, in the case of generative AI, which is what we work mostly with, we do need that data. And we cannot just depend on this technology and neglect other data collection processes. So I would say those could be some of the challenges. I have plenty of them, but linked to what our colleagues have mentioned.
That's an interesting point, because that's really a challenge to the actors as well. One thing is to point, the finger to middle management to say you need to appreciate what we're doing, but then the community also needs to showcase that it is of added value. So it's a little bit of a catch-22, and someone needs to break that impasse, so to speak. Julia.
Yeah, actually linking to what you just said, I think one of the biggest challenges is to be able to democratize this tool to a wider audience, because these tools are actually made for democratization. They are language-based, so they're not technical based, and but at the same time, they are technologies based on AI technologies that not everyone understands really. So one thing that I think it's really important here is try to be able to democratize these tools, but at the same time, not just their use, but also their understanding. And in that respect, I think something that is lacking at the moment, and it would be very helpful, is to create an industry state-of-the-art benchmark of different tools that they're starting to appear, but they are still not they haven't been adopted widely yet. And I think here we need collaboration from very different entities and sectors to be able to actually create these benchmarks and make people feel comfortable using these tools, not just from the technical audience, but even from people on the field or management as well. And together with that, I agree with Rami as well. Scalability is a big issue, but also I would add interoperability, because it's very difficult to think that one tool alone can do all the job nowadays. We need tools that you can easily switch from one to the other. And in a way, this is also linked to what I was saying before about democratization, because if you have only an expert in a specific tool, but then you need a different tool to do something different, then you need to find it, and that can take time in emergency cases. So we need tools that actually allows to be able to collaborate and then share different types of technologies.
Super. Interoperability is a big thing. Absolutely. Ebru, I kept you for last.
Yeah. I want to take over from where Jose left, actually. Maybe to clarify, with the earthquake project in Turkey, we were not still able to use the AI support. So most of like all of our tagging was done manually, meaning somebody who is a professional tagger in this case has to go through each and every document, sentence by sentence, and identify and categorize different categories of information for us. And as you can imagine, that's very costly. We were lucky, just that was an kind of rare situation that we had the funds because that was a very large project with a lot of money that we were able to hire this team to work for us. But right now, for example, when I work for GRC and also IFRC, when we try to build projects for different nation societies, we always have this struggle because we don't have the money to do the tagging for us. So we really do need the AI support to, even though there is NLP and NLP even 2.0 right now within Deep as a feature, there is still some issues, some challenges that we need to overcome. And I try to give a lot of feedback to address some of these challenges. But some of them come from the fact that it is obviously qualitative data, and it is a challenge for AI to recognize, first of all, what is relevant data for us. For example, what is really not relevant. And there is unfortunately another reason why it is challenging is when we publish reports in the humanitarian sector, it is not an academic report. It is not reviewed rigorously. Obviously, we do have some review mechanisms, but it's very limited. Obviously, we don't have the time to go beyond that. And the review is not generally done on the content, but more on the language, on the format. That's why there's a lot of reports with a lot of just repeating the same information again and again, not much value, not much added value in the text, and the AI needs to differentiate using this kind of messy data to start with. Again, there needs to be a lot of training for NLP to catch up, I think, to really make this differentiation, but also not to do, for example, there's a whole categories of information that it needs to differentiate using the humanitarian language. Right now, what it does is, what I observe it does a lot of over tagging of some categories and under tagging of other categories, and probably because of the previous data that it is trained on. So obviously there is a lot of need to do much more work for it to catch up with what we can do manually right now. But it has to happen because we just don't have the resources to keep hiring professional taggers. And another way to handle this maybe is to train people to tag. But again, this is a very long process, and it's not easy to train somebody to become a professional tagger because it really requires a very in detail, rigorous understanding of the whole humanitarian language, and that doesn't come automatically. Yeah, this is the main problem I am seeing, just and AI seems to be the solution again, if we can catch up with that.
Super, many thanks, Ebru. Can I just do a very quick check-in with the team, the DFS team, to see what we have in terms of questions from the people online, if any.
If anyone has any questions, please drop them in the chat, or also you can say them out loud as well.
Okay, great. So that means we don't have any questions right now. That's fine. Good. Okay, so we've come up to a point where we have some issues in leveraging this technology today, but also if you look into the future, what's on the horizon in terms of what's coming next, so to speak, that you see could be of value for let's say primarily the humanitarian system. Yeah? Maybe we start with Jose.
Sure. Well, the one that I see closest now is, or it is the time for secondary data to step up, because we know that primary data collection is going to be an issue in the very near future. I'm talking about this year. So I do believe that this type of solutions should and will have a key role. Also, there is an opportunity to get back to forgotten crisis, and now there is no excuse. I mean, in the sense that forgotten crisis and protected crisis can be monitored at a really low cost, and also it's a vicious circle in the sense that if crises are monitored, information will be available, advocacy will be easier, fundraising too, and it gets back into the focus. And we already started seeing it, and I do see. I mean, we're not in an ideal scenario, but I do believe that forgotten crisis should have some coverage. And again, we have the opportunity now to be prepared. Like data preparedness with AI should be a fact. And here, I do believe that there is a potential opportunity to at least show our commitment to work on that, because we keep talking about anticipatory action, preparedness, but with AI, there should be no excuses. So I do see a lot of opportunities, also with challenges there from them. But I'm positive about those.
Ebru, do you agree with Jose?
Yeah, I agree.
You have a lot of experience in the tagging business.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, one solution that we came up with was this new initiative, which we call it Digital Volunteering Initiative. So we decided, even if we can use AI fully, we still need people who would go through the suggested entries or tags in a system like that. So we do need trained people. And we thought as GRC, maybe we can create this pool of people who are already trained in this, and we can reach out to them and hopefully utilize their capacity for different projects. And instead of going with the traditional pool that already exists, we thought we need actually more special pool, like a profile for this. So that's why we started this project with university students actually, and especially from graduate studies, because this requires some level of analytical thinking and interest in the area. So hopefully with the support of AI also, and creation of this pool of volunteers who can then maybe even become analysts or junior analysts, if that's their interest. So that's one solution that we came up with to this issue. Obviously, my position working as a focal point and being able to devote all my time to capacity building, advocacy, and also providing feedback for different features is another, I think, investment on the side of GRC and IFRC. But also similar to what Jose mentioned, the new focus within GRC, but also I think in the humanitarian sector, is on anticipatory action. So it's just not enough anymore to do post-crisis intervention, but also time after time we learned that we need some kind of preparation, at least on the secondary data side, maybe to have some type of database already prepared before the crisis hits, so that the intervention can be much more effective, because then we don't need to go back and search for data on the pre-crisis situation that is vital for us to understand the crisis. So that would be another area of like maybe identifying certain number of crisis-prone countries in different regions and starting to build these databases with the support of AI would be the way to go, I think.
Okay, so basically, gradual automation is what we're looking at.
Yes.
Great. Richard, from ALSI's point of view, what do you reckon? What's on the horizon?
So I've got a slightly bolder vision, I think. I really would not like to give up on that primary data collection. As I said before, it's vital if we're going to train AI models using local data. You know, data developed from training data in the developed world does not work in the sorts of countries we're working in. We need that local data collection. Therefore, we need boots on the ground. We need field data collection. So, a couple of thoughts. Really, the OCHA initiative on activity info, I think is fantastic. I can't wait for it to be scaled up fast enough. I know it's for a 3W initiative, maybe 5W, but actually I see it being catalytic in helping that data collection, helping implementing partners actually see their own data and plan with their own data. And if they see that value, then they might put some more time into structured data collection, which then could feed some of this training data need. So that would be wonderful. I think the second, and with Rami on the call, he might have some views on this, is that I also understand that a number of UN agencies have enterprise agreements with ESRI. That's OCHA, that's WFP, WHO, UNICEF, we have the World Bank, we have a number of host nation governments. Earlier this week and last week, ESRI announced, well, actually, no, it's been around a while, but this National Disaster Risk Management Geospatial Enablement Program. Bit of a mouthful, but this is giving host governments in low middle income countries who are dealing with emergency response low cost access to ESRI software. Now, I know there's some tensions around free software in QGIS versus the ESRI solution. If it is that UN agencies have made this investment into enterprise GIS, then to me, and with governments having access to it as well, you've got this capability of not only having an environment within which those sorts of generative AI tools that Rami's talking about being derived and developed within that space, but actually host countries, teams working on complex emergencies and going to Ebru, your point, that anticipate action being catalytic in bringing GIS, geodata, and evidence to the fore. Not least, I also find it really powerful at spotting the flaws in the model outputs where they're not working, because it's just, you can just see the issues. And that's, I think, a wider point about my fear of some of the model outputs in terms of as they get more sophisticated, can we really test that they are as accurate as they say they are? And looking at the data is a very powerful way of that sort of QA check. So I think those two things. What I would say as well, and I'll do a quick share screens on this, but the reports that we're releasing through an FCDO funded program tomorrow have only really been enabled because of the machine learning, the deep learning models that we've applied at the national and regional level to pull data and evidence out that we've then been able to triangulate in order to come up with in many of the cases in these two reports, very counter-narrative findings. They're the sorts of findings that if you did an LLM or a ChatGPT question on water and conflict or climate and water in Afghanistan in particular, the results you get are very different to the results these reports are providing. And it's counter-narrative, but it's evidence-based. But because it's not, it's new, it's not going to get that sort of presence in the models if you did run them. But we'll be circulating links on these reports over tomorrow when it's released. I'll leave it there.
Super. Well, many thanks, Richard. And that was a Q&A to you, Rami. So I'll give you the floor before passing to Julia.
Thank you, and thank you, Richard, for highlighting the spatial enablement for disaster risk management program. I shared the link for that, and I really highly recommend getting access or checking these links and seeing what is needed to get access to the right and appropriate software. I really would like that license is not the challenge of getting a solution out there. So certainly reach out to your representative contacts and let's discuss if there's any licensing challenge. But what I'd really like to highlight is within all of this discussion, there's a lot already there that I'd like people to know it exists and to have the capabilities to really test and play with these resources. To start with, there's 90 plus pre-trained models that can do a bunch of different stuff, and they can work with a bunch of different parameters. I'll share the link for these models. I highly recommend whenever you test any of these models, if you don't get results straight away, get back to us. Sometimes one simple parameter as a resolution or as number of bands or the coordinate system can directly affect what the model gives you as an output. So before jumping to spending resources, see the opportunity of these models. Another thing that is out there is we've publicized, and I'll share a blog for that, word view imagery is available for those who don't have access to current imagery. It's not real-time imagery. It might not show all the disasters, but it's global imagery that is updated on yearly to 2-3 years basis. And this is available for deep learning. So you might be able to spot any data from before, from the past, where there is a damage, there is a human disaster that you can see, and you want to go and train a model on it, or just inference on it, get field crops, for instance, or settlements and whatnot. Highly recommend using that in a deep learning workflow because it will save a big bunch of downloading imagery and whatnot. You can just use the service out there. And I'll share both links for those two things.
Many thanks, Rami. And will you come up with an acronym for this service as well, or?
I know that Olivier might be with us at one point at HMPW. If you see him, you should certainly reach out for that.
I'll reach out to Olivier. Yeah. Okay, Julia, last word for you on this segment.
Thanks. Just one quick aside, I've also shared the link to ask for grants for the Carto platform for NGO and no-profits. In case you're interested, we offer different types of grants for usage of the platform. And I wanted to highlight here in terms of the opportunities that what I was thinking about this and what I think are actually opportunities, are things that are actually challenges also at the moment. So one thing that got my attention was what Richard was saying about data collection. The data are still very important in training these machine learning and AI models. And I think this is also important when it comes to evaluating these models, because we can all fire up ChatGPT and share a map with ChatGPT and ask the model to describe it. But then how do we know that the answer is good enough? So another type of data that is also missing and very difficult to get, and it's similar in a way to tag data, is getting descriptions from experts on the same answers that we would ask these LLM models. And in that, with that respect, at Carto, we're working at the moment on developing a benchmark specifically for understanding how well the different LLM models understand maps, different kinds. I don't have a paper yet to share with you, but it will be available soon. And I think this is a big challenge, because then if we don't really know what are the limits of these models, then it's very difficult to push for their use, especially to non-technical people. And then again, going back to what I thought was another big challenge, interoperability. I also see there a lot of opportunities, because more and more we are recognizing the fact that it's necessary to be able to jump from one tool to another. and we cannot work in silos. And for example, at Carto, we are recently developed a tool to access easily with a low-code solution, Google Earth Engine, which is a very specialized tool for remote sensing images. You need to know JavaScript language and know what also you're looking for. And sometimes this can be a big barrier to getting images and geospatial data that can be very helpful in humanitarian response context. So working along these two lines, I think it's are big opportunities, but also at the same time big challenges.
Super. Okay, so now I'd like to just check in with the DFS colleagues online to see whether there are any questions online first.
Yes, so we have one question from actually Ocha. Please let me know who you are. But I think this was kind of related to one of the previous points, specifically around tagging. But what is the ideal solution? Is there a shared repository of tagged content, for example, like HDX and ReliefWeb? So maybe one of the panelists can speak to that.
And we have in the room, we also have a question. Would you mind just introducing yourself as well?
Yep, I'm Daniel Elroy with the Unity Water Foundation. Do you want the question now?
Yeah.
Okay, and do I have to
just speak out. I think you can hear us online, right?
Okay.
Yes, we can.
It may be a naive question because I come from developed world data sets where you have more data than you know what to do with. So this is new to me, not having enough data and having to collect at great expense. The question is, since we can't really afford to collect everything and we don't have the time to collect everything and now we don't have the money to do it, can AI focus us on the most critical places to collect information and what information so that it can make up the difference, right? So it's just like an image compression. You can sort of go, well, this bit is probably all the same, so don't bother with detail here, go focus on this area. Yeah. So can AI help make data collection more and tagging and all that, make it more efficient and therefore fast and therefore less expensive?
Okay, do we have any other questions? I'd like to start with the second one then. Maybe, I think, Richard, weren't you alluding to this a little bit of identifying the data gaps in one of the models that you were explaining?
Yeah. I still think, regardless of the capabilities of the power of AI, I think given the paucity of material data that models would draw from, that we still very firmly need humans in the loop. Humans in the loop to design, to understand gaps, and to evaluate outputs. So yes, whilst I would welcome the approach, with a lot of caution.
Okay, and I'd also like to give the opportunity to Rami and Julia to come in on this. Julia, you first.
Yeah, well, I agree with Richard, especially because these are relatively new tools and we don't know exactly what are the limitations. I mean, we know how they work, but then it's difficult sometimes to understand to what extent the way they are built actually limit what they are able to output. And even though we still might be able to, as the person that asked the question alluded to focus, to use AI to focus on a specific area, we then still need someone to check that actually is correct. And this is something that we can test different models and see how they are good, comparing each other, but then at the end of the day, we still need someone to go and check if that's the case. I mean, this is not something that we can avoid, in my opinion, and that I don't see this will be able to happen anytime soon, considering how these models work.
On that note, though, I mean, I think in operations where we do have a good presence and coverage of of the land, it would be possible to test this.
Well, and what happens if you go to where you do have a lot of data and you pretend like you don't have a lot of data and you pick and choose and you say, what would happen if we only use this data? How much would we lose in the confidence in the results? Right, where you can actually ground truth that you can compare.
Yeah, these are all exercises that you can do, and you can check how good these models are actually working. But then operationally, you would still need someone to actually say, yes, this is where you have to go, and then go and do it. I would be really scared of giving this decision away to AI.
We have a follow-up question in the room here before I give the floor to Rami to wrap this up. This question.
I just wanted to add to that. Actually, it's not a question, but there's no one model that will fit all data, right? So, I mean, and although whenever you're trying to make global models, because of the diversity that we have for, I think, any problem or application, one sees that regionally things vary so much. And now the whole idea is how do you really incorporate the local knowledge into these new models efficiently? But I doubt like if we can have one model that is efficient, that works great for all over the world.
I'm thinking country by country at least, or region. Or...
yeah, and I mean, either you get like a really nice, diverse, big training data set that trains all of the world. But typically what I'm seeing is that, you know, it's people prefer to go for localized, efficient models than have one big model.
Okay, Rami, your thoughts, and perhaps between Jose and Ebru, maybe because of the last intervention there, maybe you can come in on that as well. So Rami, over to you.
So I think from here, what I'm hearing, these are all valid comments, remarks, and questions. And I genuinely see it as two-layered different problems. One is a model to find these data sets, resources, models, etc., that are available. And there's a lot being done currently on that. We certainly always want the human in the loop, and we don't want to give the model the freedom to go and pick and make up answers wherever we can, because we can implement the RAG or raw augmented generation concepts on top of these models so they can find the right data, the right workflow. The other remark is when it comes to how accurate the actual prediction or classification models can be. I got the remark of regions, and I really highly recommend working on this. One model for the whole world is just a lot of computational power, a lot of training data sets, a lot of overfitting, and a lot of failing points. While one region might be just a little bit more contained from all these different aspects. So try to work on these regions, create a model that operates well. I was working on an agriculture workflow lately in Lebanon, but I started training a model specific for Lebanon. Took it and tested it in Sudan. Guess what? Gave pretty okay results, but clearly it needs to be pushed for the Sudan region, and so on and so forth. So trying to build up on what exists and move forward with contained examples. Over.
So a bit of contextualization helps, and then once you have a number of contextualized models, then perhaps you can look at patterns of similarity, and maybe not vice versa, because that would be over strenuous. If I interpret you correct, Rami. Ebru and Jose and Liz, any last points on this one before we move to the first question?
I think we can move.
We can move?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question, was that by Andre Verity by any chance? Andre?
By Ocha.
Yeah, it's Andre.
Andre.
Anyways,
No,
so could you...
it was not from me, Eric.
Okay, all right. It would have been nice though, because then I could have picked on you, but never
No,
mind.
but I would have given you a question too hard to answer, or I would have made it very specific to you.
Probably. Détente is the end result of that one. So could you repeat the question that we had online from Mocha, DFS?
Yes. So the question is, what is the ideal solution? Is it a shared repository of tagged content, like HDX and Relief Web?
Or
That is the question. If the person
something
is,
else.
yeah.
Or something. So between Ebru and Jose, you start with Jose in the room.
Sure. I think we've been trying to look for a universal solution in a world that I think it doesn't work. So I think it needs to be a solution that is good enough for many people, and then combine it with your needs. So for some people, extremely granular data set defining the most specific events might be the best, while for others it's just noise. So I do believe that it would be good, and I advocated for this since long time. Yes, to have some sort of a institutionalized data set that is already tagged. Let's say, yeah, like like as we have Relief Web, to have a tagged repository of data that needs. I mean, it's not as easy as it might sound. I don't even know if it sounds easy, but it requires many different components. One of them is that we still need experts. And when we said before that we need to train, now more than ever, we do need a lot of definitions. We need taxonomies. We still need to work on that. It's not as easy. We need people that human in the loop that you've mentioned already. We need people curating, verifying the data. So I do see it as a ideal solution. And again, it's never going to be perfect, but it's something that I would like to see someday. It's either like a universal or one project per country on the deep, so people would have always that place to go. I do believe that centralizing avoiding duplications, one-stop shop for wherever it is, even if it's not good enough, but so everyone works on the same database. If we are fragmented in the way we approach data, then we won't be able to. We might be able to partially improve our tools, our workflows, our teams, but we need that common space. And in the case, for example, of Relief Web or HDX, the example is great. Like HDX has become a reference, and it's great. So yes, it's not easy though. So yeah, back to.
Okay, great. So Ebru, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I actually, the answer for me would be yes. That's what we need, I think. But that would need to be definitely a coordinated effort, both on the resource allocation, but also the human involvement. But that's what we need, because at the end of the day, I mean, we know more or less where the crises are going to happen, and we do have the same needs of information when it happens. So and also I think we have done quite a lot of work already, thanks to Deep and all the experience with Deep, with having a generic analytical framework. And I also personally worked a lot on this with Jose. So we can actually use one framework and apply it to globally, and that's, I think, possible in this case when it comes to secondary data, because of the common language we have developed over centuries with the humanitarian sector. I think it is possible in this case to have one framework and produce data using that one framework applied globally. That's possible, I think. So yeah, the answer is yes.
Fantastic. And there's actually a session tomorrow at 4 o'clock here in the HMPW on that specific topic, if anyone is interested. I said before, right? Advertisement is allowed. And yeah. Okay, so before I hand over to Luke to wrap this up with his observations. Everyone is familiar with an elevator pitch, right? So I'm going to give everyone 10 seconds to kind of give your view on what should humanitarians or aid workers in this case do to engage in this topic. How can you push this forward, so to speak? Starting with you, Ebru.
Just like what I said a second ago, I think with Deep, we have now enough experience working in different contexts all around the world. We know what the needs are. and we know the solution to those needs, more or less. All we need is more coordination, more cooperation, coming together, recognizing the common needs, and allocating necessary funds and investing into this, so that when the crisis hits, which will, we are more prepared through, secondary, for at least for the secondary data part.
Perfect. Richard.
I would point to 4 things. I would talk about skills, digital literacy, technical understanding. Second, tools that I've described before, data that we've also mentioned about driving to micro data. You get those 3, bring them together with exciting, innovative methods around something like anticipatory action, crisis response, or complex emergencies. And then you start getting critical thinking and advanced analytics in place, having real impact.
Thank you. Julia.
Yeah, I think collaboration, as Abru said, and cooperation is key, and this can happen on different levels from a data point of view, so sharing data and making data available on the cloud, so everyone can access the data, but also using data models that are open and scalable as well, as GeoParquet, for example, or GeoArrow. And then on a different level, collaborate on initiatives to assess new AI models and tools, because this is the only way to make them transparent and be able to actually trust their predictions.
Great. Jose, what do you think?
It's quite linked to what others have said, but I would say it's train both systems and people, increase the literacy. So they can improve. They can improve. The only way for this is through collaboration and creating actually a community practice. It's a new sector. And this being said, tomorrow at 4 we will be talking about building capacities on the AI, and I'm selling also my. So yeah, it's collaborating through community of practice.
Fantastic. Liz, over to you.
Yeah, so talking about collaboration, my main takeaway would be to engage with the private sector. There is a real wealth of knowledge and expertise in the private sector, and also there is a real interest in supporting the type of work that you all do in the humanitarian sector. There are a lot of programs for supporting social impact through various levels, through accessing, already built technologies that you can leverage kind of out of the box, through creating bespoke AI applications for really specific use cases. Since advertising is allowed, just a reminder that Dataminers AI for Good program is about to open its 3rd cycle this May. So if you're interested in applying, please reach out to me. Yeah.
Fantastic. Here, I would say to that. Rami, please, the last words for you.
Yep. So I'll leave you with 3 points, guys. First, really utilize what's available from resources to build your capacity. There's a lot out there. 2, try the COTS, deep learning stuff, and GeoAI, Gen AI models before going and training. Check these out. If they don't work, don't hesitate to reach out. 3, collaborate your findings and results. In a lot of places, a model that you train in Gaza might be applicable in Grenada and vice versa. Try to collaborate, talk to your colleagues about your use cases, because it might save them a lot of processing time and training time. And over.
Many thanks, Rami, and to all the panel. And now I'll hand over to Luke to have him basically give a summary of today's panel.
Thanks, Eric. Somewhat intimidating to summarize when in this era of automatic summarization, and also because of the excellence of your inputs. Actually, this is a really, not just because I was in the front row, but this is the panel and discussion that I've most enjoyed over the week, and it's been because of your insights. So well done for keeping us all engaged until 5:30. Just in terms of some reflections, I think Eric, you framed the session nicely to recognize the moment that we're in. And it really is this moment of, obviously we have fewer resources, but capability, which we've never seen before, as well as new actors who are willing and able to help. And so we really have an opportunity that we've never had before. And it does invite us to think not just in terms of the first and second loop learning, this idea first loop learning, just what do we do, which is normally what we do in HMPW. We just, take the temperature, improve one thing, maybe turn up a bit on the knob one side or turn down the other. Second loop learning, where we've brought in some new things, anticipation and so on. I think we're really in this era or this moment of third loop learning, where we can look at who's doing what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing with fresh eyes. I think it's a really interesting moment. And yeah, I don't want to repeat the great elevator pitches, but there are, with these tools, an ability to move beyond, artificial intelligence to more advanced intelligence, and using that, those tools that we've been introduced to, but also, the potential for an inquiry. So we're actually able to engage with the data in a way that we've not been in the past. It's, we've been able to look at LLMs, even analyzing spatial data, which would, at that scale has never been available before. And it means that we really have that ability to have a conversation with the data. But one thing that I think was a real takeaway, and kind of you asked for a next step, I think, which came out, which is around the benchmarking idea. Some kind of, trust pilot for humanitarian applications of AI is a nice one. Some things which came through from what people said, obviously transparency to the extent possible. We know that deep learning could represent a black box in many cases, but at least to know the inputs and the outputs, to have, as Richard mentioned, verifiability or an ability to evaluate the predictions. This is something that we should have as we should have had as a standard when we talked about scenarios and risk analyses for many years, but we can do that much more at scale because we're doing this more programmatically. The need always to have the human in the loop, as Jose mentioned, this is obviously key. It's the human and humanitarian, but we also need to use that in terms of bringing the principles and values, and as well the normative taxonomies and frameworks that have helped us to understand the information that we're presented with in emergencies, and use that to inform decisions, which is ultimately a lot of our jobs. Obviously, some part of that, you mentioned it, the scalable and shared infrastructure that we need. I think Rami mentioned the need for this. What we have relied upon up to now is just not fit for purpose. HDX, 10 years, did great, but we need something which is a lot more ready for the programmatic exchange of data in a way that makes it more discoverable, makes the compilation and use of all of that data much more accessible to people who may not have the resources, but have the questions. And I would argue, sorry for this, Rami, for open source as being a real key aspect of this, partly because I represent, probably should have introduced myself to whoever joined later, the IFRC, the Red Cross, Red Crescent National Societies, many of whom don't have a lot of resources to spend on enterprise solutions. And so where we're able to utilize things like STAC, the spatial temporal asset catalog, which many of you may have heard me talk about far too much. But essentially, that enables us to use all of the open tooling, which already exists, QGIS and Jupyter, to reproduce analyses. I think we should also have that as part of our benchmarking or standard setting for these kinds of applications. But yeah, just to say, well done, Eric. Very, very good moderation. You've done this before, and thanks a lot. And applause online, please.